But I'm wondering where fiction comes into that and education through fiction. So I'd love it if you could talk a little bit more about that. How does that work?
Lucy is very emotional as a character. My Lucy, not this Lucy, sorry, not you, Lucy, but my little character, Lucy. She's very emotional because she's gone to the Caribbean, very upset because she didn't want to leave what she knew. She was going somewhere she'd no idea, across the other side of the world, etc. So I think basically, she's got the emotions going through the book that allow her to understand gradually what she's seeing. And I think those emotions are coming out in the book. So for her, it is emotional. As a reader, the children start to see themselves within that character, and they start to be, going through the emotions that Lucy is when she starts to realize what's going on and how the earth is, or the oceans are being damaged.
I think you're very smart to have chosen children as your protagonist, Gloria, because I think we're all exploring what it is to be an author, and there's a whole science to being an author, of course. I don't believe any of us have been trained as literary authors per se, and I'm certainly on a learning curve every day. And one article I read about the difference between middle grade and young adult is that with the middle grade children, they're coming back home still. Whereas with a young adult, the protagonist is of that age group or slightly older, maybe late teens. But the young adult protagonist is going forth to explore the world and facing the dangers and facing the plot and not looking to come home. And so the difference is very subtle. But I think Lucy, your character, is a character who is still a child. Right, and so she therefore appeals to your readers because they can identify with her. And I think it's the same with you, Kevin, with Molly. It's maybe she's a young adult, so she's a young adult, so she goes forth to explore and to solve mysteries, and I think that appeals to that readership as well. So it's very important to get your readership right when you write your characters out.
I'm curious then, Alan, why did you choose a polar bear as your main?
Well, I want polar bears to go out and solve humanity, I'm just kidding. But I think polar bears are a very popular symbol for many environmental issues that have to do with climate change, because they are the apex predator that is one of the first to suffer the immediate effects of global warming in terms of melting of the ice pack in the Arctic, and the migration of polar bears south to look for food, and the ensuing human-wildlife conflicts that happen. Entire human populations on the fringes of the Arctic Circle have come to have conflict with polar bears, and this is not the fault of the polar bears. This is the fault of global warming, and I want children to realize that. But that's just the reason I also chose a polar bear is because it's a bear. And if you look at the children's book industry, it's incredible how many books are written about bears. There's something about bears which somehow children and adults also feel endeared with. Smokey the Bear, social marketing in the United States about forest fires. Winnie the Pooh, Paddington Bear, all these have shaped our childhood and the childhood of the generation today as well, because they appear in animated movies. We read them in books, but today they look at them on the silver screen. It doesn't matter. The point is that the bears are huggable, they're cuddly, so they make a great symbol for children to attach themselves to. And they're also curious animals, and Polo is certainly very curious. And so that I'm able to leverage all kinds of non-fiction content through his curiosity, if you see what I mean. He lifts up, metaphorically, he raises stones to see what's underneath them. And those stones are things like environmental justice, climate finance, deforestation, all of these things. And but through the eyes of a polar bear, so that the children can then see through that lens. Very, very similar to what you do, Gloria, you know, making science accessible.
Yeah.
And Kevin, would you say that one of Molly's characteristics is that she has this curiosity?
Without a doubt, she is her entire character is very different from the way she's been brought up. She's home educated, born in Guatemala, so she's slightly different. She has different viewpoints. She has a very open-minded for a young person with some life experiences, but not enormous amounts. And she's very curious as to question why the statues are here. But at the same time, you know, this was written at the time when statues were being pulled down and the history of people and statues themselves was being questioned. And of course, she questions that and